Hi, welcome to Trigonometries. Today we're going to take a look at a spreadsheet function called if. Now what this function is used for is if you want to have a value in a field that depends upon certain conditions occurring inside your sheet. And so what we'll do is we're going to take a look at this. To set this up, I'm going to create a value of 2 in this first field here just to start. And in B1 here, I'm going to create an if function. So I hit int equals because it's a formula. And I type in if. The first entry in the if command has to be a condition of some sort. And this could reference a cell somewhere else in the sheet. So for example, I'm going to say that if A1 is greater than 5, then you tell it what you want it to put in there. So your first condition here is if A1 is greater than 5. If that's true, it will print or do whatever it is that you're going to put in the second entry. So if I say if A1 is greater than 5, I want this field to be equal to 8, then what it'll do is it will check to see if A1 is bigger than 5, and if it is, it'll make it 8, and if it's not, it'll just produce false. Now let's say you wanted to actually produce something if the thing was false. You can use a third argument here. So the first argument is the condition, what you want to check whether it's true or false. The second argument is what value this cell should take if the condition is true. The third argument is going to be what value the cell should take if the argument is false. So let's say that if A1 is greater than 5 is a false statement, meaning that A1 is less than or equal to 5. Let's have it set this field to be equal to the number 3. So then when I hit enter on this, this will check to see if A1 was greater than 5. And since it's not, since it's 2, it finds that that's false. And so it produces the value in the third argument, which is what you get when it's false. If I come over here and change the value of A1 now to 7, which would be greater than 5, this will make that A1 greater than 5 statement true, and so should make the B1 cell change according to the now true condition. So if I put in 7 here and hit enter, it produces the value in the second slot, which is what it produces when the condition is true. Now we can actually make copies of this all the way down. You can then put in a whole bunch of different numbers. In fact, we can use random integers here. So let's see here. Let's do random integer between, say, 0 and 10. And what we'll do is we'll take this value and we'll copy it all the way through. And you can see that for all these random values over here, whenever it's bigger than 5, it produces an 8. Whenever it's less than or equal to 5, it produces a 3. So that's how the if command works. Now, what if we had multiple different things that we wanted to have happen? So if this condition is true, we want it to take this value. But if this condition was true instead, we want it to take this value. Or if this condition was true instead, then we want it to take this value here. And so what we'll do is we can use what's called the ifs command. So let's go over here. Let's put in a couple of different values, a 3 and a 2 and a -4. And then in this field here, we're going to create a formula equals, and we'll use ifs. Now we're going to have multiple different conditions. First, I'm going to check to see if D1, which is 3 cells to the left of what I'm writing in here, is greater than 0. If D1's greater than 0, then I'm going to have it just produce the string Bob. To get a string, you just put it in quotation marks, and that lets the spreadsheet know that it's supposed to be a word. Now, if it's greater than 0, I'm going to get Bob. On the other hand, let's say D1 wasn't greater than 0. Now I want to have it check E1. If E1 is less than or equal to 4, then I want it to give the string cake. Now, if you notice, in this case, both conditions, D1 greater than 0 and E1 less than or equal to 4, are true, but it only checks the first one first. And if that one's true, it produces that string, and then it doesn't check anything afterwards. So the fact that both the first and second condition are true, it means that the second condition is going to be ignored, and only the first condition is going to produce the value. So when I hit enter here, this will still produce Bob. But if I were to then make this -3 so that it makes that first condition false, now it'll produce cake. Finally, I can add another one. Now, let's say I want to check F1. If F1 happens to be equal to -4, if I hit enter here again, the reason why it's producing cake is because the first condition, D1 greater than 0, is false because it's -3. And so it ignores producing the Bob there. Then it checks E1 being less than or equal to 4. In this case, 2 is less than or equal to 4, so that's true, and that's why it's going to produce the cake. And it ignores everything after it gets a true. So even the fact that the third condition, F1 being equal to -4, is still true, it's ignoring that. If I then make E1 bigger than 4 so that it produces a false for that second state, and this will produce that third one work, because first condition is false, second condition is false, third condition is true. Now what happens if we make the third condition false as well? So let's change this to -5. Now you'll notice that it says I don't know what to do. So the reason why this didn't produce a value is because all three of the conditions we told it to check for were false, and this doesn't know what to do if all the conditions are false. However, there's kind of a nice little trick that you can produce in order to get it to do something if all the other conditions are false. So what you can do is the next argument here would be another condition for it to check, and then the result. And what you do is you create a condition that is always true. You could write the word true, or use the number 1, because spreadsheets interpret the number 0 as false and the number 1 as true. To make it easier to understand, we'll just write true there. And then we put whatever condition we want. We're going to write the phrase last call. And so when we hit enter, it's going to produce last call because the first three conditions are false. D1 is less than 0, E1 is greater than 4, F1 is not equal to -4. All three of those conditions are false, and so it's not going to produce any of these strings. But the very last condition is something that's always true. And so this is going to produce last call, and it's kind of a way of giving it sort of like a way of saying, this is what I want you to put if nothing else works. And so that's pretty much it for how you use the if and the ifs command. Now you can use these commands for a whole bunch of different kinds of applications in your spreadsheet anytime you need to have the value of a cell depend upon certain conditions occurring. I hope that this was helpful to you, and we'll catch you next time on Trigonometries.